Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Nick Delinski Show. This is Scott Kerker, along with Metamora head coach Nick Delinski. Coach, Friday night, a little warm, but what a tremendous night for Metamora. Before the game, we honored the 75 football team. We rededicated the football field with the Malone family. Before we get to the game, those are two pretty big things.
Without a doubt. I mean, that bringing back that many guys that have played, and we talk about the family aspect of it, and it's kind of a full circle for those guys to come back and see, and our players were able to witness and see and celebrate with what they did, and it's a pretty special group. We talked about it last week, about them put us on the map, and it's our job to stay there, and but a lot of guys with a lot of history, and I'm hoping they really enjoyed being back at Malone, and the festivities they had Saturday night and all that sort of stuff. But I'm sure there was a lot of talking, a lot of laughs, and a lot of hugs, maybe a tear or two on the way in and out. And
few tears,
but good for Coach Helmick and Coach Vogelsang and all those guys to be around. And it was really it's really special. And I think that's one of the things when we talk about what Metamora football is. It's bigger than just this team. This group right now. It's everybody, and it's pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. The varsity game, I want to make sure that I say this right. I believe that the Metamora varsity football team is headed in the right direction. I thought that the difference of the game was in the offense and defensive lines. And I thought it all boiled down to seniors versus some sophomores and inexperience.
Well, a little bit, yeah. In Washington's still Washington, right? And we talked about it last week that, is there a chink in their armor? They're 1-1. Last year they were 0-2. Is there a chink in the armor? Well, they get to the middle line and they're well tested, and that's for sure. And we just couldn't get quite it done. And I'll take a lot of the blame for that. You put 0 points up and you're the offensive coordinator. There's things that you got to take, and we reevaluated. And we showed the guys in film that it's not as ugly as the final score. It's not as ugly as being held under 100 yards of total offense or whatever that number was. A lot of that was Washington winning one-on-one battles. We talked about it last week that you got to be physical, and then you got to win some one-on-ones, and they won way more one-on-ones than we did. But we were able offensively to build off of last week by watching film and saying this is how close we really were to putting points on the board, to controlling the clock, to doing the things that we wanted to get done. We just got to get better at it, and that includes myself. I put ourselves in some bad spots offensively with play calls, and we weren't able to overcome them sometimes. And the hard part was when you only run 32 plays as a play caller, you don't get in a rhythm, and it's hard to find where you're at and what you're doing. And a lot of time you're just feeling and searching and grabbing versus getting a roll on what's going. You're doing this well, so we know we got to go to this to counter when they counter. We didn't have a whole lot of counters. It was a lot of defense. And then defensively, I thought Coach Herring and the guys made a really good adjustment after the first, drive and a half or so. We get the fumble to turn it around, but we were buried inside the 20. And then field position does play a big part of high school football for sure. And, them getting the ball at the 50 for, I think, 6 of their 7 possessions or whatever it was. And we were buried deep inside more times than not. And that makes it hard. We had one good sustained drive to start the second half, but just couldn't put enough together. And they're good enough offensively that they can do a little take the ball and hide. And next thing you know, you look up and there's 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter.
Right. And, when you look at a film, and it can go both ways, sometimes you think you played really, really bad. It's, when you watch a film, it's not quite bad. Sometimes you think, man, we played an almost perfect game, and you really didn't. So when you watch the films, I'm sure that was the case there. We thought we played badly. It probably wasn't as bad.
Well, it wasn't as good as we'd like, that's for sure. But was there enough that we can build off of to say, when we did things right or we got people in the right place, but we only had 10 of the 11, this is what happens in terms of execution. And it's a great example. The last year was tough too against Washington. We got the one with the long counter that we just battled, and we just couldn't get over the hump against them. And then they've really put together some really good defensive plans, and we know what they're doing. I've just struggled over the last couple of years of really figuring out what is the way to get to them to be able to take advantage of what we have. And Jadon didn't get enough touches, but when you only have 32 plays, and like he was targeted on half of them and only gets 9 carries off of it plus a catch, and some of it's off read stuff, and did we make the right read, or should we have changed who we were reading? All those sort of things, but they pile up in a hurry in a 12-minute game, 12-minute quarters, 48-minute game. You got to make adjustments in a hurry, and if you don't make them quick enough, the game gets out of hand, and that's kind of where we were offensively last week.
And you're right. It seemed like we kicked off, and then the game was over.
It was, and both teams, we want to run the football. We both do, and there's a couple incomplete passes, but those didn't last very long because the next run, and it was played pretty cleanly in terms of penalties and that sort of stuff, and it was, those sort of games, we knew that's where we would be. It's just we got to make sure that we were able to come back, and I think we'll have a better plan as coaches this week, and hopefully it comes through.
Coach Ryan always used to say, when you lose a ball game, two things can happen. You can, put your head down and go off the corner and pout, or you can learn from it. And I got a feeling you guys are going to learn from this one and get better for that.
Well, we hope so. And the one thing we talked about Friday night, and we talked about again Monday after film, is that you can't let one turn into two, right? You can't let what happened last week carry over into this week of practice. And we've done a real good job of kids preparing. I mean, it got really hot again, and that, and that makes it challenging because we've had a little sickness run through us. We've had some heat. You want to make sure that you're getting what you need done during practice, but you got to make sure that, we're staying hydrated and getting foods and not passing the sickness from one person to another. So those are important things as well. But in terms of that, I thought that we had a good week of preparation so far. We'll kind of finish it up on Thursday, but I thought both yesterday and today, and it'd be Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday's kind of our film and walkthrough day. But yeah, I mean, you can't let it snowball, and that's the key. And you can't really lick your wounds when you got Morton on the schedule next. I mean, you got to be ready to go.
Yeah, you can't really feel sorry for yourself.
No,
you gotta pass that away. And you touched on it a little bit. I thought second half particularly, I thought our defense played pretty darn well.
Yeah, I mean, we made some good adjustments middle of the second quarter. Coach Herring and Coach Keese, Coach Elbert, and Coach Yeager, and those guys they kept working, right? They kept just finding what's our next answer, what can we do, and they made an next adjustment at halftime to be able to do some different things. They've really moved into the zone game at Washington, and the thing is, zone's a really, really good play because if you get one guy in the wrong spot, number 44 will find it, and that's what he did from the first play. And we had 2 guys out of position, and we had to make sure we take gaps away to make sure that our linebackers fit in the proper gaps, and how can we take away gaps so it's not more than one gap that we got to cover. And that was the adjustment they made at halftime, and it worked. Not that what our original plan defensively was pretty good. We just weren't getting to where we need. And the hard part about zone is it's hard to recreate it at practice if you aren't a zone team, which we're not. We're a gap team, and we counter and power and belly and that sort of stuff. So when you're trying to get your scout team to represent what they're doing, it's a bit of a challenge. No different than a zone team trying to get ready for a gap team or a downhill team to make that adjustment too. So I really like the plan, and the thing is you see a pretty similar offense this week.
Yeah, and Morton's probably a little bigger.
Size-wise, I mean, they got two big ones, but the averages are relatively close. But those two big, the left tackle and the right guard, those are 2 big guys, 6'6", 6'7", 300 plus, and they are tall. They got a lot of tall dudes, and we'll have our work cut out for us there.
For sure. When you looked at this team, or when you looked at last week's game, you always try to find the positives. Mm-hmm. What were some of the positives, you think?
Well, I do think that what Washington was doing physical will help us down the road. I mean,
sure.
A lot of guys understanding what level they have to play at to be able to finish a block. There's one thing to get to the block. I got to finish the block. Offensively, defensively, if I don't trust what I'm being told, and I get my eyes out of place, for example, if I'm closing down the line and I peek over my right shoulder at the quarterback when it's a handoff, now that tackle's got me and I'm pinned. So those sort of things, if we aren't folding in behind as a linebacker into that inside window because we came too far upfield with what they were doing, and now I'm on a chase. So those are things we were able to correct on film and get corrected for the week. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of positives, and there's a lot of guys that will tell you that they did not play very well. They were frustrated with how they played personally, And when they do that, when they take that ownership, that's when you know that following week you got a real good chance to fix things.
So in other words, the guy has to trust what's going on behind him.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about understanding, what your gap is and where your eyes are supposed to be. And that's offensively and defensively. If you're playing man coverage in your corner, your eyes better be on your guy, because if you're peeking back in, that means the guy's running by you. If you're a defensive end and you're getting red and you've got quarterback or you got running back and you change your eyes from either running back to quarterback or quarterback to running back, whoever you were supposed to get is going to beat you to where you need to. Right. And, we kind of say the bird never lies when we got the helmet on, because it's always pointing in the direction in which your eyes go. Now we got the stripe as well. So there's a lot of indicators of, are you looking in the right spot? So they can't really hide.
So the stripes have kind of come back to haunt them.
Well, a little bit. They like them, but we can see where that stripe's pointing, and that's where your eyes are. They're not in the right spot. It's going to show pretty quickly.
So there's a little bit of deception in that.
Well,
there.
Not really. I mean, the birds are always there too, but no, it was just a little ad but yeah, we noticed, and it's pretty easy to tell where their eyes are, with our helmet now.
Yeah, for sure. You get ready. We'll talk about Morton here in the second half of the show, but the one thing about high school football, and you look around the area, there's been a lot of parity because Central got beat. A lot of people thought Central was the next coming and possibly a state championship, and they still may be. Mm-hmm. But a 4A powerhouse, Morris came down and beat them.
Well, I mean, last year they were 5A. So we were a 5A school. Morris is a 5A school. So now they're size-wise, they've kind of dropped in enrollment similar to we have, and they're probably going to be a 4A school this year. But we all know Morris.
Oh,
they're not a new. No. And them and Central and those guys have had some battles over the last 5-6 years in the playoffs and regular season. So. Yeah, but there is. That you look at the final. The finals this week of Dunlap and Pekin go to overtime, and a missed extra point versus a made extra point gets a W. So those sort of things. I think there's a lot of parity. I don't know if anybody's great. I don't know if anybody's terrible though either. So it's a lot of, you just got to get in that right window on the right night to give yourself a chance.
Right. While we take a break, when we come back, we'll have the player of the game, and we'll talk a little bit about your next opponent, the Morton Potters, and we'll talk about the rest of the Mid-Atlantic Conference.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to the Nick Delinski Show. Again, I want to thank, before we go any further, I want to thank Jake and Sarah Atkins for allowing us to come down here and do the show from the grill. We come here after just about every home game or even away games. Again, thanks for letting us film the show from here. Coach, this week's player of the game?
Defensively, Sam Barbarenus really played well. He got the fumble recovery. Got a lot of good pressures, and he's one of those guys that did his job all night and got into the right gaps and had some TFLs along the line, and wasn't a whole lot of bright spots from Friday night, but I thought Sam was one.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought he had a really nice. He got that fumble recovery on the second play of the game. That was huge. But yeah, he did have a solid game. He's going to have another solid game this coming week.
He's going to have a lot of solid games as we go along, because he's a good player, and we expect
he's
you got to have your best player. Got to have your best players play the best when it matters the most, and he's definitely stepped up to the plate these last 3 weeks.
And you got to lean on those guys. He's a senior. He's been
two-year starter.
Two-year starter. So he's definitely one of the guys you're going to lean on. Morton Potters come in. They're big. They're, like you said before we went on air, their left side, or is it the right side?
Well, the left tackle is the kid's got an offer from Illinois. He's a 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", whatever way you want to measure, and what cleats he has on that day. And he's all of 3 bills. And then the right guard is a senior. The other kid's a junior, but the senior's right. The right guard's a senior. He's 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds too. So, and then the other guys just kind of look smaller because when they stand next to them. Those two are really big guys. But no, up front offensively, they're big. Defensively, 71 will play there in the nose, and they'll play another big guy kind of at their nose position. But their D tackles are D ends, kind of an odd front. Very similar to like a Sam Barbarenus type body types. 6'2", 6'3", somewhere between 220 and 235. They can do a lot with them. They stunt with them. They move them. They loop them. So those are things that we have to address. But like their DBs are like 6'3", 6'4", so they got a lot of length, and just something you don't see a whole lot of in high school.
Right. And they're 3-0. They come in. They beat Mohammed Seymour, who, has anybody had a tougher 3 games to start the season? And Then Mohammed Seymour, they started off with Morton, then they played Morris, and then last week they played Sycamore.
We got Sycamore. So, yeah, I mean, they're pretty good. And they got Sycamore pretty good last week, and, and Morton got them. So, it kind of puts you in that comparative level, and we saw Sycamore, at the end of July. And but, no, I mean, it kind of puts you in to recognize, like, we're up against a really good opponent, which they always are. They're very well coached. They've really had our number offensively against our defense. The last couple of years we've struggled against them. Glatz was one reason. He really much torched everybody. But it's what the schemes that they've run and what they've done there is really, really good. And we've got to make sure that, we execute again what we're talking about in our game plan of making sure you're where you need to be and trust the guy behind you is going to be where he is.
And just watching some of their highlights and some of their games on the highlights on the news, they're another team that, like Washington, they'll kick off, and before you know it, it's the fourth quarter with 3 minutes to go.
They can run the football, and that's what they want to do. A lot of their passing game is quick games, screens, slants, bubbles. They do a good job with that, unbalanced stuff, and then they do enough vertical off that stuff to keep you honest. So they'll get the big one over the top. But the quarterback's what makes them go. A 2-year starter, he's a junior, number 12, and he's a good football player, and that's where everything starts. And we got to make sure that we get hats on him when he's carrying the ball, because he's a lot like Steven in terms of size-wise, and he's a physical runner. So we got to make sure we got more than one guy. But I think we've said that now for 3 straight weeks. So between LP and last week at Washington and now him, we've seen 3 pretty good quarterbacks, all that can run the ball, and hopefully that's prepared us, for this Friday of what we're going to see.
And, they have I think it looks like they have a wide receiver that's about 6'5" also.
Yep. And he plays defense, plays wide receiver, and they got some length. I mean, their guys are long. So, and Braden's our tallest DB. He's sitting right at 6 foot. And obviously, Jadon is 5'9.5", 5'10", but I'll take him. Like, he fights, and, we kind of saw it last year going against bigger receivers. That's something he's not afraid of. But, we got some guys that you're going to have to battle in those situations, and we got to take away what they do best and try to find a way to have them beat us left-handed.
You got Morton this week. Then after that, you'll have Canton and Peak in the next 2 weeks after that. The conference, they said that the top half was really strong, the bottom half maybe a little bit weaker, but you're seeing some teams that can play some football. Canton, I believe, is 0-3, but I think, with the exception of Morton, they've had the lead in their first 2 games.
Yeah, and
East Peoria's not bad.
And East Peoria's going to do what they're doing right now. You only play with people that are on your schedule, and you go out and get a win. And they're, in Canton, you watch film on them, and they're big up front too, and they got a lot of big size. And they're just, second-year coach there and just trying to figure things out where they're at, and they bring back a couple all-conference kids. So, obviously, I think coaching keeps getting better each week, and the longer you go and you play these guys, the more they end up knowing about their own team. Sure. Same with us. We're learning each week a little bit more about what we can and can't do and what we do well and what players we need to put in what position. So all of that starts to add up. So as the season goes on, you start to learn more and more about your team, which allows you to fine-tune maybe what you're doing well, and you kind of get rid of stuff that you might have worked on over the summer that you said, this is what we want to be, but this isn't what we are. And but yeah, I mean, Pekin I think they had a tough injury, to a really good player, and we'll see, speedy recovery to him and see where he's at. But they're still scoring points, and they're still peaking. They're big, So these 3 weeks again, we're in the second third of the season already, and boy, we talk about it moves fast and all that sort of stuff. But the first third's over, and the goal is, we try to talk about chunking everything in, win 1 game a week, and then try to put together a nice 2 games, and then 3 games, and then next thing you know, we're in that last third. So we got plenty of work to do. This is a big week this week for us to get back on the good side of feeling things, and but Morton's not going to make it easy.
No, not for sure. So far, has anything surprised you about your team and maybe the other teams in the Mid-Illini?
Well, I don't know, surprise is the right word. I think we got a pretty good feel of where we're at. Those young guys are really coming along. I mean, that's helpful. Starting to mature in terms of they're no longer first-year starters. They're starting to take that next step of understanding what it is that we're looking for out of them to be successful. But I think the Mid-Illini is really good. Oh. I don't think there's really a whole lot of off nights in terms of size and physicality, that sort. And and Limestone's putting some points on the board too. So all that sort of stuff starts to add up. And but we can only take care of it 1 week at a time.
Right.
But I think our seniors, for the most part, are doing what's expected of them. I think we've had some pretty good leadership, pretty good understanding of what needs to do to get to that win, and upholding that standard that we talk about in our program.
For sure. And you know, I look, we're 2-1. We'll throw last week's game out, but up to that point, you've played pretty well. You have to be happy with them.
And I don't think we didn't play well Friday. I think it was more Washington than it was necessarily totally us. And we'll see what happens with Washington the rest of the way. You know, it'd be great if they just roll everybody, and then we feel pretty good about a 24-0 loss. And not that you're ever going to feel good about it, but
takes a little bit of the sting.
A little bit, yeah. You know, and this week they got another big one. They got Pekin this week, so you know that kind of lets us know kind of where the rest of the conference is at. And but we got to find ways to be better, and that's what we talked about, and that's what we spent our week, you know, focusing on getting better at it is what we do, and getting kids confident again. Because you know the one thing that as a player when you lose, there's a lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking, and you know what did I do wrong, what did I do right, but got to continue to pump them up and understand that yeah, you might have done some things right, but you did a lot of good things too, and from that we can build.
Right, and I'm sure you will. I you know, watched coach for a lot of years, and you always get things that weren't quite right. You always get them right.
Well, we try to motivate the kids the correct way and understand that, you know, we care about them, we want to see them get better, and if we can fix it, we're going to do our best to fix it, and they got to come along with it. And I thought our great kids had a great week of practice. Had a alumni reach out and just say, you know, how'd things go this week? And, you know, he's like, how did they respond after the loss? And I said, we've done everything. They've done everything like we've asked them to. Put it behind, but this is what we need to get better at. This is what we need to fix. They came with great attitudes and really worked hard this week. And just got to make sure it's enough.
You'll get better.
It's our hope.
Coach, bring home a W this Friday.
We'll do our best.
We'll see you in Morton Friday night.